and its value to the Houthis. We're joined by Jamal Benomar. He used to be the UN's top man on Yemen. He is now chairman of the International Centre for Dialogue Initiatives, and it's very good to have you with us, sir. Thank you. As we just saw in my colleague Nick's report, the Saudi-backed Yemeni government blaming the Houthis for this recent escalation in attacks. Your assessment of what is going on and why?
Well, the Yemen has now fragmented, basically. There are more political actors. Each one of them is in control of territory. The most important rebel group that is now in control of the capital is the Houthis, but there are others. You have the forces associated with the Islah Party, the Muslim Brotherhood. They're fighting in Maghreb and other places. You have secessionists in the south, backed by the UAE, and you have Salafi groups backed again by the UAE, and Al-Qaeda, of course, and others. There are warlords, each one in control of some territory, and the prospects are very bleak. And the suffering of the Yemeni people continues.
Well, it's a very pessimistic outlook. But I'm sure you have every all the evidence to suggest that these are bleak times. The Saudis have proposed a truce. The Houthis have rejected that offer, saying they want to see a full lifting of the sea and air blockade. You have just described very, very complex politics on the ground. I want to sort of look at what's happening with regard to the Houthis and the Saudis. Do you see that blockade being lifted and a ceasefire happening anytime soon?
It doesn't seem like it's going to happen very soon. Both sides are talking, but they're talking past each other. Both have conditions. The Saudis have conditioned their lifting of the blockade or part of the blockade, while the Houthis also, they want many things to be done before even they can begin peace talks. They're basically been talking for years now about the consequences of conflict, ceasefires and humanitarian truce and so on. What hasn't happened is substantive discussions on what should be the end game, what should be the solution. And I think if the US is to offer a vision to the Houthis of what will be this end game, I think the discussion would be different.
Right, and you've penned an op-ed to that extent. Let me just stop you for one moment, because you were envoy to Yemen. You brokered a peace agreement back in 2014. Talks back then at least seemed as if they were on track to conclude, until Saudi Arabia intervened militarily, which of course forced you to resign. You condemned the Saudis and warned against interference from outside forces. Are you convinced that this is it for the Saudis, that they truly want out of Yemen at this point?
Well, in 2015, when the Saudi intervened, there was a political process in place. There were negotiations that I was chairing and facilitating at that time, and Yemenis, all sides were negotiating, and they were close to a power-sharing deal. So the military intervention of Saudi Arabia and its allies aborted this agreement, and now we're back, to discussing peace talks and so on. But the reality here is that the involvement of countries of the region, the involvement of Iran, UAE, Saudi Arabia, has complicated the situation, because Yemenis, before 2015, it was an internal Yemeni strife. Now Yemen is the theater of the regional competition. Now, this international community has not been helpful either, because when I was the UN envoy, the members of the Security Council, the permanent members, were very much in support of my effort. When the Saudi intervention started, that support evaporated, in fact, because Yemen and the war in Yemen became a business opportunity for members of the Security Council competing for arms deals with Saudi Arabia and the UAE. So one condition for peace talks, to start and succeed is for all these regional actors, to leave Yemenis alone, leave them the space. This is what I said to the Security Council in my last report in April 2015. Yemenis will need to be afforded the opportunity to have the space for them to make the compromises necessary for them to move forward without interference and without coercion from outside forces.
Well, let's talk about this US involvement then. In a recent op-ed, you said, and I quote, there will, of course, be those who say that for the US to abandon preconditions, let alone seek to negotiate with the Houthis, would be a capitulation, a reward for the Houthis bombing themselves into government. But, you said, from the IRA to the Taliban, there are many examples in recent history of armed groups doing just the same. The US negotiated power sharing with both. Some might beg to differ with you, particularly on the part of the Taliban there, but let's, leaving sort of any criticism of those thoughts aside, Yemen's politics are incredibly complex. As you have rightly pointed out, how does what is going on around Marib at this point complicate US support for a ceasefire to help end this conflict?
Well, first, I'm delighted to see the U.S. engaged. The U.S. supported the war effort, the Saudi war efforts. They're not a neutral party. They're part of the problem, but I'm delighted they're reaching out and talking to the Houthis and others. It's only through dialogue, that a way forward, can be found. But having said that, I must state that, for, this conflict to be settled, at the end of the day, it's the Yemenis who need to make, the hard decisions. They can continue to fight, forever. If the Houthis believe, that they can prevail and rule Yemen, they will be, they are wrong. I told them this in 2015, and I'm still saying it today. I told also the President Abdurrabbu Mansour Hadi, when he was in Aden, that if he believes that he can create an army in the south and then advance on the Houthis and throw them out of the country, that's not going to happen. The reality here is that Houthis are part of the social fabric of Yemen. So are other factions also, like Muslim Brotherhood, separatists in the south, and others. And they need to coexist, and the only way forward is a power-sharing deal. Without that, if somebody wants to just defeat the Houthis, it means that the war will continue and continue forever.
Jamal Benomar, former UN envoy to Yemen. We are delighted to have you on. Your analysis and insight is incredibly important off the back of what was some superb reporting by Nick Robertson and his team. Thank you.